I'd like to call
Engenheiro
António Braz
mecânico
Costa.
formado pela
A
Universidade.
mechanical engineer graduated by the University of Minho, specializing in public management. He has a solid track record in innovation and technology. Throughout his career, he has led strategic initiatives and served on the boards of key organizations in the fields of innovation, mobility, nanotechnology, and industry, distinguishing himself by fostering competitiveness and technological development in Portugal and across Europe.
And in Europe. Good morning, nearly good afternoon. Thank you so much for the invitation. I was really happy with the invitation that was made, and I said yes. Let's talk about happy or sad things. I think we have to talk about both to be aware where we are. Right now, we have a world in revolution. On one side, we have geopolitics. On the other hand, we also have the threats that the world has in terms of climate transition. And at last, we have unique circumstances on this planet in which people decide to send missiles from one country to another, which is really sad. But it has huge implications, such as being weeks without oil transportation. And all of this leads to rethink our business, and I don't change the we need to be aware where we are and what are the challenges that we have ahead, so that our what to do in our business for Brazil and for Portugal, because Portugal, the fiber that we process the most is cotton, and will carry on being a country that does wonders with cotton. As my colleague Raul said, the other fibers are also doing their wonders. In the previous panel, I was in a meeting with the textile minister of India. He invited me, and their strategy has two components. ChatGPT, look at it, new textile India strategy. They have two pillars. The first, align with Europe in terms of sustainability, traceability, and the second one is betting in artificial fibers. On contrary to what has been said here, careful, because India can be more focused in creating their of man-made fibers, and I'm not talking about synthetics only. We can talk about cellulite fibers as well, manufactured, artificially manufactured, and I'll talk about it soon. We need to be aware of where we are, not to be surprised. Passion is very good. It's like our children. We love our children, but sometimes we need to question if they are having the best behavior. Well, my title is With Hope. World needs more natural fiber. Europe is a symbol in this way, but Europe influenced other spaces. Land, plant, no plastics. It's not only Europe that is in the way of changing fossil fuels materials for others. Australia, South Korea as well, and we know that South Korea is the power in artificial fibers, in with huge performance, and Taiwan as well. But I believe in this. The world needs us. The world needs cotton, well-made cotton, but it needs cotton to replace the huge growth of we're talking about mainly of polyester. The European Commission says this: fast fashion is out of fashion, and they say this because the Commission realized that what Europe and United States invented, we invented fast fashion, and it's creating several problems. In the north of Spain, there was a pilot experience of a fast fashion called Zara. Zara was built because they saw that production ability capacity in the north of Portugal, and we only survived because we learned to be different at that time, to a fast response and flexibility. China just had entered the trade world organization, and we changed our business. And we'll say that our sector is the one that pollutes the most. It's not true, but who pays me to leave? CITEVE, that's the technological center of textile innovation in Portugal, and we created a cluster of entities. With the three above is the textile center. Brazil has nothing compared to that. It's a bit of CETIC, CENTI, it's a bit of different universities of innovation centers in Brazil. CITEVE is totally eclectic concerning the whole industry. We have the Center for Nanotechnology and Advanced Materials. It was created when we noticed that it would be the future of the textile sector, and it happened 20 years ago, because the idea was started being created in 2003 to 2006, and it's also a company that makes certification. So we are 472 professionals in these three entities, and in this last year we had a volume of nearly 40 million euro of revenue. So it's a business that it really needs a lot of investments to reach this point. It's important to say. But it's important to say that we have small factories in our pilot plant facilities, because nothing leaves our facilities unless it's really ready to leave. We work the science materials, and as you can see, there are some areas that you won't even recognize, but we ensure that they all have importance to the textile sector. The CITEVE, they do certification of many of them, you know. Let's go to what is really interesting to us, sustainability. It's true that we are not the most pollutant sector, but we do pollute. The World Economic Forum published this comparison table, and it's not the most pollutant, but we need to be careful with some issues. And the European Commission was careful to say, okay, Europe has to go forward in this area. Okay, you textiles, you're the first ones. We were really happy to be the first ones. Okay, let's do the work, and people will follow us. It's not that's from the point of view of laws. Okay, it has to be like this. Of course, we understand that it's one of the factors that has an expression throughout the world, such as tourism, the textile sector. All are competing among themselves, and the sustainability of the products is not only in the fiber production, it's a lot in the processing, but also in its use. Let's take a look at it. I'm not losing time with this, because this graphic shows the growth of fiber production, and it's been growing a lot in the last years. But we see what has been growing. It's a polyester. If you invert, and I'm going to show you this inverted graph, cotton has been around the same production, and the increase of demand has to do with thermoplastic fiber. The fossil origin dominates the growth, and I need to tell you that 59% of global production of fibers are thermoplastic. They come from oil. There are some of them that don't, but at around 88% of it is polyester. It's from fossil fuel origin. The recycled polyester is growing, but it's losing pace. So the new production is so huge that recycling ones have lower and lower expressions. There are many intelligent people working on that areas. There are some recycled from PET bottles, and people started creating PET bottles that have never seen water because they're going straight for the fiber production. Due to the faster polyester growth, virgin polyester growth, it's the cotton. The cotton quota is growing a little bit, but when we compare to the dimension of fiber production, basically it's stable. It's not going up nor down. So let's say there's a space where it's limited not only by consumption but its production capacity. And you know that we need land to produce cotton, and land is not available in every country. And in some countries, producing cotton means producing less food. And also, there are regions in the world where the cotton production increase the price of land. Who knows where Aral Sea is? Look at the internet. Aral Sea. That's the region that the Soviet Union elected to lead the world in the cotton production. It was then a sea, but a lake, and the lake has dried. And you can see images of seas that are on land because there are no lakes anymore. So recycled fibers, they keep on presenting a small part of it, and we see that everything is recycled and sustainable. That's a lie. The important is the final statistics that we are recycling very little, even in the EU where it's mandatory. But fiber is only the beginning. We can see how we do the CO2 emissions. They use the cycles of washing and drying, and the use of nanoparticles. So it's a significant, important part of it, of the impact and use. But there's no doubt where's the huge part. On the textile part, it's also the production of the fiber, and it's not sad or glad, it's life, because when we see that we have a huge part of this is dying of the fibers, afterwards I can provide the basic information. because I didn't want to bring so much tables and numbers, only these graphs, but I can provide you with the sources and where these calculations were made. So we have a problem. So the Europe then saw who signed or not the Paris Agreement, and this strategy then is an European agenda for industrial policies and competitive policies, and all the priorities and the actions include this concern in terms of sustainability. We have here a different color because it's true, and it's sustained by something that I'm going to talk about at the end of this talk.
Also, for the first time, the European Union said that the fashion sector is a priority strategic sector for the European Union. I had never seen this before. I'd heard about the aerospace industry, cars and vehicles and so on, but this was included. And so you can see in the red dots here is where textiles are also placed. Talking about aeronautics without textiles is not possible because they're made from composites. And also I'll be talking, you can talk about automobiles where you have textile products. And in the so-called Green Deal, the European Ecological Pact, there was a set of principles which I won't go into detail about. But from 2019, when this was first announced, we started to produce laws. Let me call them laws because for short that's what they are. They are laws to be applied in the European Union. I won't spend any time on that, but to give you an idea, the European Union strategy for sustainable and circular textile is very clear. It's to reduce and to step on the brake to reduce the impact of the fashion industry in Europe. You can see some of the different points there. So how can this actually be implemented? This can only happen if there is some kind of justice or fairness. For some time, the European Union has been demanding the European producers to have find more sustainable ways of having textile transformation, but they didn't require that from who exported to Europe. And you know what I'm about to say. You know what I'm talking about. I remember in 2010, Fernando, when nobody believed that the Chinese product would be coming to Brazil, when it is. And we know that in a lot of circumstances it's not fair. It's not fair because they don't have the least responsibility they have the least amount of rules to be fulfilled, so it's very unequal. So this is very important to level the playing field, and the rules are not applied just to production in Europe. The rules are applied to all of the products that are sold in the European Union, and Brazil is included in that. Within this strategy for circularity and sustainability, I would elect, I'm not the only one here, but a number of colleagues that elect these 16 documents as being the directives that are basically laws. And it's basically an announcement of a law, and this has to be incorporated into each country's legal regimes. And these are the things that include things such as security, chemical products, safety, the substances such as perfluorides, polyfluorides, other molecules, and the one in red here, the most important one perhaps, is the product digital passport, because it's basically a digital tag that contains all the information about any particular product. It seems like a nice idea, but let's see how that's going to work, how much it costs, and how it can ensure that the whole chain is involved in this process. So organizing this in a different way, we have here the issue of safety, certain aspects of transparency fulfilled. We have the responsibility that producers have to have. So to sell a product in Europe will require you to pay an eco tax, as is taking place with other products. And the eco design side of things, it's obligatory, because it's not a good practice to make obligatory a set of principles on eco design when you design something in Europe at the moment. Full stop. This is completely different from the past. So there is a set of rules associated with this. I'll go through this very quickly. In Brazil, you are very much involved in this ESG reporting system. Currently in Europe, the financing for companies is not the same if the company practices or not certain good practices in terms of sustainability. The same rules that reduce the possibility to access bank credit if they don't fulfill the laws, and let's see how far that's going to go. And of course, we have the full war being waged against fast fashion. And there is a rule that we have to have prohibition and destruction of unsold products. The big luxury brands have their business model based on buying a lot to supply their clients, and what's left over was burned. This is now prohibited in Europe, and which means that the retail has to find a way to reduce their stocks and have a better relation with the textile industry, which is much different, in order to ensure they have minimum stocks and have a faster and more flexible response. And in terms of exports of textile wastes, and not just in Europe, but Europe and China and the United States and Canada were supposedly exporting textile waste products to Africa. Basically, they were exporting trash and making it another country's problem. And so this was prohibited. And so a company that works with textile waste cannot export them to other countries. We also had the prohibition of what we can call greenwashing, by prohibiting to say deceitful things about our products. What I usually say is that all of the brands say that everything is organic, and when we know that organic cotton represents like 1 or 2% of total production in the world, which means that all of the shops can't all have 100% organic cotton in their products, so they're lying. Now this has become a crime in Europe. The brands cannot lie about the sustainable characteristics of their textiles. And there's something here which is not much to do with the industry itself, but there are some aspects that are. In some countries in Northern Europe, there's a lot of importance being given to the reusing second-hand clothes and reuse of clothes, and begin them repairing them and reconverted and reused. And also because we have the combat to microplastic pollution, which I mentioned already. And in terms of reinforcing the control of dangerous hazardous substances, which are harmful to human health. And it's also an obligation that all of the waste produced through eco-design, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, also have criteria established with a high technical rigor, which are being imposed on the imposed on the exporting companies, and we will also be exempted from those that is being required of the others. And this is something which is quite difficult, which is payment of eco taxes, eco fees. There's a big discussion going on about this, because the countries that have more trading that want to pay a flat eco fee, and there are sectors that want to have it linked to the level of production sustainability. You are not sure on which side I am. Those who are more sustainable in their production shouldn't pay eco fees, and those that are not should pay a heavier eco fee. So Digital product passport. Who believes that Brazil will adopt the digital product passport for their products? Raise your hand. You are wrong. You are wrong because of the following. Because you are completely integrated into a global chain of production and sale of textile products. And it's not just Europe who are adopting this. As you see, the US are adopting something like this. Australia has already adopted. There's a set of countries, very important countries, that are adopting this. So we are issue of business. We are a question of being able to sell or not sell. And believe me when I say, and because nobody raised their hand, it means that you still haven't become aware of what you need to do. And I think this was the main aim of my presentation. Of course, Fernando could be talking about technology, advanced materials. That was done very well by my colleague Raul. But my aim is to give you this information about what is about to be done and which is necessary. In terms of the regulations in relation to textile products labeling and things, there are a lot of things that are still not being completely been established and clarified. But what will be most important is a digital product passport. A lot of people have a lot of questions. Me and Fernando have had lots of discussions 3 years ago about this topic. But currently, I would say that there's no more doubt about this. This will happen. It is happening. There will be a lot. This will be enforced in the European Union, and this will affect the rest of the countries. When we see the new India's new strategy, we see India doing what? Aligning with this very important market, and Europe is that market. And the United States and Europe are the main markets for India, and they will be aligning with this. So all of this means that all of the products will have to have an electronic tag with a set of information which has to be included. Look at this list. In talking, I doubt that you have all this information on this traceability of that shirt. That traceability you have on that shirt showed the geolocation. In Europe, you'll have to have information about how many liters of water were used to produce that shirt. How many grams of CO2 were emitted to produce that shirt. And this changes completely the requirements, and will require transformation of the companies in the whole chain in terms of cotton production. Believe me when I say this, this will cost a lot. In terms of who are those who are responsible for this, to apply this and to require this? It means that I have to have the information of the whole chain from the beginning, otherwise I won't be able to achieve this, achieve the digital product passport. If I'm not mistaken, there's been a new document produced to show how this has to be applied, and I was happy about that because the portability, or if you want to say the interoperability with operators, non-European operators, is ensured. That means that from now tomorrow you can set up a company to emit digital product passports in Brazil, and you will know all of the requirements that will be made based on a central platform in Brussels. So everything will be digital, identification using QR codes or NFC systems or whatever. I think we should opt for the QR code because it's cheaper. And basically, the passport will type of digital twin of that product. So what is not defined here? If the information will be on a model level, and which contain all information about the production process, or whether the information will be on a batch level, and therefore, if you consider that all of the items in a batch would have the same passport, or if the passport will be done on a item level. This is not defined yet, and in my opinion, this last one will be the death of all of us, because nobody is ready to be able to get all the information per item. But undoubtedly, it will be less demanding than the batch level. So, the initial obligation will be very much on the batch level, and this can evolve in the future to a more individual demanding level. We have an example, and if you wish, you can scan this QR code, and what you'll see are examples. There's not examples of companies, of prototypes that we made in order to publicize this digital product passport. At the moment we have 150 companies emitting these passports in Portugal, and this is because France requires some of the information already. The clients are already in this luxury sector. So you'll be able to see, and I invite you to see what kind of information is there. Water use, CO2, the amount of chemical products, certifications will be available there, and so on. It's something which is very different from what's been done so far. And I'll conclude here with the challenges. The first challenge is that the world is going crazy, because Europe says, okay, we have the Green Deal, we have the United Nations SDGs, Donald Trump says, drill baby drill, to get more oil, so welcome polyester. And we have to deal with this. The second challenge is that the governments, not just in Brazil, the governments are not very receptive to all this. They just try to get around these concepts until there is an actual law in place. And that, as you can see, what happened with the passport itself, which should have been already implemented in the European Union since the beginning, it will only become a requirement in 2028. Another requirement is that there's always a war between industry and commerce. The countries in the northern Europe would prefer acting like nothing's happening. They would just like to buying cheap things from China, but the industry wants something fairer. So this is a war that has to be managed in the European Union. It's not like in Brazil, because we have countries in the European Union, and not all of these countries have the same view. Not all of them have the same economic interests. And then we have the problem of reducing costs. Virgin polyester can cost 15% than the cost of recycling polyester. So there's no way of requiring this, of balancing this. What happens is nobody's going to opt for recycled polyester compared to virgin polyester. This has to be resolved with an eco fee. And then, now it's my and Fangueiro's responsibility, and all the scientists, because there's a lot of work to be done. When I say that I have a recycling system of post-consumption products that doesn't really exist. There's still a lot of technology required to solve the problems. Talking about post-industrial products and industrial waste, because there is a market and there is technology to do good work with that. But for post-consumption, they still have that. We will see in Brussels, people will say, I have systems, semi-automatic systems, but it's not true. The technology is not ready for this, and a lot of investment is required to achieve the next steps. And in terms of bioeconomy, this is the use of originated materials, fibers, and so on. Require greater investment. and they require greater protection by the governments who are pressuring in this sense in Europe. And therefore, there's no doubt that there is a change because it's already in course. The European priorities, summing up here, bioeconomy is bioeconomy for defossilization, and within the science and technology program in Europe is bioeconomy, which really has a large space, circular economy, and saving resources and transparency. We can't get away from that. It's clear that that's the way it will be. There are other reasons to try to get away from fossil fuel dependency, and this is a picture that unfortunately we're all familiar with every day. The dependence on oil is what influences geopolitics, and this has been bringing a lot of problems for our companies, and it's clearly there is an incentive to move towards a bioeconomy. And also in terms of the climate emergency, we have a super El Nino coming. We should be calling it the super grandfather. Every day we're hearing about this, and in Europe, in two neighboring countries, we will see one with 40 degrees and one with lower temperatures. This is something that has to be resolved, and we have to help to solve it. A bioeconomy requires cotton. At the moment, we are accustomed to this scenario. Textile Exchange made this prediction here. The numbers that were put into this prediction less than 10 years ago were achieved. So we're here at the moment. These are the fossil fuels. This is cotton. These are the cellulose, regenerated cellulose fibers. If everything remains the same, BAU means business as usual. If everything remains the same, what's going to happen is that cotton will remain the same. Cellulose-based fibers will grow slightly, and the growth will be in the fossil fuel products. In 2050, there will be no doubt that you'll have the same thing happening as been happening now. So what we see that could happen if there is an inversion to this, and I'm almost finished, is that number one, the cellulose-based fibers, artificials, will grow a lot. I was very happy to see that Suzano is investing in that Lansane company, because for Brazil it was exporting biomass and didn't keep this added value. There's no doubt this will happen. I don't want to sort of disincentivate you, but the cellulose fibers spend 20%, use 20% of energy and water and products that we're used to with cotton. I don't know if you're aware of that. So we have to be aware of that. And in this respect, these fibers are very competitive, and they're more easily functionalized because you can do it in the dough before you go to spinning. So we have to think about that. We have to think about that because from my point of view, a big competitor are not the fossil fibers, because these have enemies that want to reduce their importance. But those who do not have enemies are the cellulose regenerated fibers. Europe is investing heavily in this. And in India as well. As you know, when India says man-made fibers, they're not talking about thermoplastics. They're talking about other types of fibers. Therefore,
so I'd like to believe, by the numbers I made, that it will be possible for the cotton to grow very little, because there's no way to grow. And finally, we'll have a source of raw material that is looking for ways to produce new materials that can be cotton fiber that has been used. It has been recycled. It produced new textile. Cannot be recycled. It can be melted to produce dough for celluloid fiber. I believe this is what's going to happen. The artificial fiber is an European response to the dependence of oil and strategic autonomy. Europe has forest. It's produced from wood. The consumption is falling, so forest and biomass in the forest is being channeled in the north countries for fiber production. But biomass, more and more companies that are supplying in the north of Europe are producing lyocell from biomass, but also by recycled results. For an example of a technology that has been patented by Hong Kong colleagues, the use of cotton in to allow recycling of the polyester, and this mass is being used of celluloid masses of cotton are used to produce cellulose. So the imported cotton is paramount for the strategy of defossilization. A huge, without cotton is a lot harder. Cotton is 20% of total, 20% of the total of fibers, and it's very important. I believe that a combined strategy between the artificial fibers, the celluloid basis, and cotton are the solutions to replace the power of thermoplastic fibers. I'd say they're not competitors, they are allied in this war. And cotton has a huge opportunity because there are countries that are going to limit the oil products, and that's where cotton has a new opportunity. But impacts of European regulation in Brazil. Yesterday, a colleague was saying, I cannot do a cruise except when Europeans are my clients. Then I can start to think about it. Europe is important for Brazil in terms of cotton. You might say it's not. We don't buy. The textile industry in Portugal is very small. Europe is less than 100,000 tons. That's nothing. But the impact is zero when you see the whole of the industry. Brazil doesn't export to Europe. Therefore, everything indicates that the export possibilities, and we've talked a lot about this over caipirinhas. Brazil has the best conditions to have better conditions to export finished products to Europe than China. The distance between Fortaleza to Europe is Lisboa is very short, and it's open sea. There's no channel. There's no obstacles. Well, Brazil can say, "I don't want you." Okay, it's in its own right. But with the Mercosur-Europe agreement, there has never been a greatest opportunity for Brazil to enter the European market. It adds value to its production, and not selling commodity, but a finished product, which is what everybody wants. I think this is the moment. I believe this is what's going to happen. But right now, the impact in the exposition is very limited. In terms of cotton, this is not true. 25% of your production goes to Europe. Not directly, but through India, through China. When we think on a value chain perspective and the digital passport of the product, rules that affect the whole value chain, you are there. Don't think you're not. It's easy to notice who are the main suppliers of textile products. If you multiply this by the percentage of your export to these countries, then I made the calculations. The millions to billions of tons. That's 1/4 of what you produce and 1/3 of your exports. Abita Juta, they're concerned with this. Fernando has a constant contact with political, technical decisions on Europe, and I believe that a bit can help. But please, don't be surprised. It's important to think about it, because with little alteration of what you're doing, getting this initiative of traceability, and you have monitoring, you have traceability, you have a lot of information. You need to organize this information to provide to your clients the information that your clients will use to send to their clients. And I believe that at least don't think about the whole legislation, that's boring. But think about the digital passport, because it brings with it a lot of issues. I'm happy that there's this possibility in terms of interoperability and trust between Brazil and Europe. I'd like to thank, with an example, in Portugal, the margarine that was most successful in Portugal was one that appeared in one of the first in the market, when all the Portuguese people didn't know what that was. Well, that's a fry. What we used to fry things and cook, we used olive oil and pig sweat. And there's a company came, they have a very good product. How did they create the brand? They created cooking courses, they publish magazines with recipes, where one of the products was the margarine. Think about what Raul Fangueiro said. Cotton can have more value if you provide tips to your clients on how to transform cotton in something better. And this in research and development, because if you have technology, for instance, I can say that because it's public notice. Portugal is developing process of special dyeing process for lensing. I don't know if you've heard about it. What for? To tell our clients, buy this fiber, because this fiber is going to consume less energy, less water, less whatever, and it will have this and this characteristics. Think about it. Cotton is a transitional thing, and we believe, it's like this because it's very good. It's not clear that it's better than the others, so we have to take care of the image, take care of the market, the cotton market, so that other sustainable fibers, and says, okay, cotton is very bad. I've heard that. I've heard people saying the cotton deceives. It seems to be sustainable, but it's not. Destroy natural systems, and it has a textile process that really is harmful for sustainability. Think about this. Think in a different way. Create conditions so that your clients really want to work with cotton, providing information, providing resources. I'm not talking about financial resources. I mean information and knowledge, so that with your raw material they can be ahead of the others. And the market asks for function, beauty, but it should be sustainable and transparent. If there's a country that can do this, it's Brazil. And I believe that Brazil is the best country in the world to say, we are the ones who know about textile sustainabilities. And if that happens, I will be very happy. And I wish to have the opportunity of come back to see this happening in Brazil, because we want to drink more caipirinhas in the end of the day. Thank you so much.